No-ish. Okay. Could be a little louder.
There's not much I can do.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's YouTube.
Yeah, I mentioned that movie first, and then I'll make my joke.
That's it. That might have been a joke.
About what we saw as a double feature.
Alright, that's it.
Okay.
Alright, welcome to Cinema Smackdown. That was our awesome opening music for today, signaling...
Isn't that our new theme music for every show? From here on in.
Oh, maybe. We'll see how things go. At any rate, one little piece...
I understand Stan Lee wrote that as well. He wrote everything.
He took some credit. That's definitely... that was definitely one of his key things to do, take credit for everything. At any rate, I wanted to mention right off the top that there is a lot of Canada content in the Spider-Man cartoon show from 1967, and that song, the piece of trivia about it is sung by CBC singers, a chorus of CBC singers who were corralled into putting that together at a moment's notice. So
because CBC had to have singers on staff all the time because of all those damn CBC jingles you remember so well from the 70s and 60s and going back.
I remember the Wayne and Schuster theme. Does that help?
Really, of that era, I think I can only hum The King of Kensington, and I don't even think that was CBC.
Oh dear, it totally was.
Was it?
Oh, it totally was. He's King of Kensington.
Careful, or we'll royalties.
Oh, I think the relatives of Al Waxman deserve $1 or two, don't you?
Personal note there. I live on a street one over from Kensington and NDG. And we were looking for a house there once upon a time, and I really wanted it just so I can get in an argument with my neighbors about who was the king of Kensington.
I want you to invent a time machine so we can go back and make that happen. I guess it's not too late. You can still buy it. Not too late.
Huh?
I mean, while you're busy gobbling up all of the real estate in Montreal, I think that could be your next...
That's
project.
me, real estate tycoon.
Shane is enjoying, how do I put it? The transitional period of moving at the moment.
Yay, moving, so much fun.
He is figuring out a new part of life and changing abodes, meeting the new neighbors, judging them all based on their looks.
Ruining the market value by moving into that neighborhood.
I think we've waited a few too many minutes to mention the fact that I played the opening Spider-Man theme.
Oh, right! How long ago was that?
We have a theme that we're going with today, and our theme today, believe it or not, is Rocky meets Spider-Man. We're gonna discuss Spider-Man and Rocky movies because
it should be Spider-Man versus Rocky.
There is a tenuous...
I want to see that fight.
There's a tenuous link between them.
Only personally for us.
But there's other things I'll be bringing up in a moment. But before I get to that, I'm gonna shamelessly plug my show tonight. This evening, at around 9:15 to 9:30, I will be performing trivia live at Grumpy's, downtown in Montreal. It's 1242 Bishop Street. It is a fun time to be had by all. It is a different kind of trivia show. It is
the best damn pub quiz in Montreal.
That is correct. It is the best damn pub quiz in Montreal. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you getting my brand out there.
I'm waiting for my t-shirt.
Ah, sure. Well, we'll repay you in booze, as is the Grumpy's way.
Accepted.
We do pub trivia there every Sunday. I am the host. We give away prizes after every single round. There are things that are happening there that you will not believe, but mainly it's just a good time. So please come on out and support the show. And in future episodes, I'm going to start giving away topics that I'm going to talk about on the air. So if you listen to this show and you come to that show, you'll have a leg up on the competition.
Also, come down to Grumpy's and see where Bad Santa 2 was filmed.
That is very true.
The glitz and glamour of Hollywood is all around you at Grumpy's. So.
Oh, there's a couple. So there's Bad Santa 2, as well as that Paul Giamatti movie from a few years ago.
Oh, Barney's version, yeah.
That was shot there as well. So you can sit where Rachel Lefebvre sat.
Little known, the entire movie, every second of it was shot at Grumpy's. Any scene that doesn't take place at Grumpy's is green screened. Yeah.
I believe it. It's possible. At any rate, we are talking today about the new Spider-Man movie and arguably the new Rocky movie, as I like to put it. So the films are Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Creed 2.
Or as I will forever know it now, Creed 2 Into the Rockyverse.
I like it. Approved. At any rate, Shane and I took in a double feature on Thursday afternoon of the new Spider-Man / Rocky movies. And we had interesting mixed reactions to both films, and we did not discuss them after the movie.
So you get to hear us argue live as we
held them.
as we expose our opinions to each other for the first time.
I'm going to start off by mentioning this hilarious fact, which is my beginning of my bridging the gap between these two franchises. So here's the thing I discovered in my research by having a quick look. There are now 7 theatrical Spider-Man movies. We're talking 3 Tobey Maguire movies, 2 Andrew Garfield movies, and
Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, I'm forgetting one now. Okay, at any rate, I think I've just...
Well, there's the Captain America one, there's the Homecoming, and then there's Avengers.
Oh, that's right, sorry, it was Homecoming I was trying to think of. Mm-hmm. So it's 3 Tobey Maguires, 2 Garfields, that's at 5. Now we're at Homecoming. We add Into the Spider-Verse, so that's 7. And then there's 2 Avengers movies, the Captain America one and the Avengers, which brings us to a grand total of 9 theatrical Spider-Man movies. Now, on the other hand, in the Rockyverse, we have 5 numbered Rocky movies. Then we have Rocky Balboa, that brings us to 6. Then we have, let's be clear now, this is a Rockyverse movie, Grudge Match, which brings us to 7.
I've missed this. What is...
Grudge Match is the movie where Stallone plays Rocky and Robert De Niro plays Jake LaMotta, and they face off, and it's a comedy. They gave them different pseudonyms, but that's who they're playing.
Oh, okay.
Make no mistake, it's a Rocky movie. So that brings us to 7, and then we have 2 Creed films, which brings us to 9, which means we're tied. 9 Spider-Man movies. I mean, if we could consider Spider-Verse a Spider-Man movie. I think
unless he has pet turtles in Grudge Match, I'm going to have to call BS on that one. That breaks the continuity.
Well, would it count if he, in one quick scene, sadly and quietly folded dough to make bread? Would that be close enough for you?
Does he own a restaurant in Grudge Match?
I saw Grudge Match in 2013. I instantly forgot every scene in that movie. So I'm going to say yes, with full authority, I can tell you that he owns a restaurant in this movie.
Okay, I accept it then.
I just like the idea that there are 9 of each film. So it's true that this...
And then Talia Shire shows up as a ghost and haunts Jake LaMotta to death.
But let's be clear, Spider-Man will soon dominate because in May there will be a new Avengers movie, and then in July there will be another Spider-Man movie, bringing the grand...
Far From Home, Mrs.
So we'll need an animated Rocky film to keep up, followed by Creed 3 and...
they're also really keen to make a Spider-Verse sequel.
Yeah, but that'll be many, many years away. Do you know? I don't know if you know this, but this thing has been in production since about 2014 or 15. So it's been a long road to get here.
Yeah, production or development hell.
Well, I mean, let's start off talking a little bit about the Spider-Verse movie. It is interesting to note that the film was sort of spearheaded and brainchilded, if you will, by Chris Miller and Phil Lord, the gentlemen who made Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, the 21 Jump Street series, the Lego movie. These guys made all those films. They are...
And then their career hit a little hiccup.
That's correct. While balancing out what their next projects would be, and they had a few things lined up, including the second Lego movie, including the theatrical Flash movie that they were working on, they were offered the chance to drop all those projects and direct the Han Solo movie, which they eagerly jumped on, worked on for 5 or 10 months, or I guess much more than that.
Shot about 80% of it.
Shot about 80% of it, and were summarily dismissed and had most of their work binned, at which point they brought in a much better director who turned their film into an absolute flop. It is a real low point in the Star Wars universe in terms of how well it did. It is also a low point in the Star Wars universe in terms of how well it worked as a film.
Right. But apparently it was a high point for Ron Howard, because no film he made prior to that made more money, even though it lost $80 million.
Well, Well, when your other movies cost $17, it's more likely to turn a profit than the one that costs $300 million.
Not to mention when you're doing reshoots of 80% of your film.
Yeah. At any rate, what is hilarious is if you look at the track records of Lord and Miller, it's nothing but hits, successes, #1 box office films. So of course, the moment they're given a Lucasfilm movie, they're immediately removed from it because these guys don't know what they're doing. They're going to tank our movie franchise.
Yeah, well, the problem is they're funny guys who make funny movies,
Yeah.
and someone decided, oh no, we can't possibly have a funny Star Wars movie.
Exactly.
That would kill the franchise.
So they were removed from that, but they still had their little pet project on the side, which was the Spider-Man film. Now, to be clear, they didn't direct this, but and not to mention the fact that if you look at several iterations of posters and credits for this. I don't know if I have their names right. It's Chris Miller and Phil Lord, but I constantly mix them up. They themselves joke about it and mix their own names up, so it adds to the confusion.
They are also conjoined twins. Little known trivia.
So, the fellow whose name is Phil, his name is still on the screenplay credit list, but the other guy's name has since been removed, despite the fact that it was on there for years. There's a lot of Hollywood shakeups in terms of credits and who gets what for what. But at any rate,
who knows what Writers Guild rule kicked in there.
I think the bigger point to make here is if you see Into the Spider-Verse, you will feel their fingerprints all over it. It has all of their touches, the kind of humor they do, the little tiny dramatic moments, the strange additional things that really don't need to be there but are just, they tickle me, which I will refer to perhaps from now on as the pick a bagel effect, which will be my favorite moment in any movie this year.
Yeah, well, the film is chock full of gags and references and funny little bits that put me very in mind of a family-friendly Deadpool.
That's a very good point. But it has a lot of heart. I mean, I didn't really say this at the top, but it's a good movie.
Okay, because let's just preface this by saying a lot of people are praising this as the best Spider-Man movie.
I mean, I can see how that would work for some people. I think it's a little bit too inside baseball for a lot of folks.
Right.
Some of the references are downright, you better have read this comic book to understand it. But at any rate, it has a lot of heart, and there are real characters in this. A friend of mine who has not seen the film, his biggest worry about going to see the movie was he caught a moment of a trailer and said, oh, they just sound like they're doing those terrible cartoon readings, where people essentially sound like they're reading off paper, not putting much emotion into it, keeping it flat so the animation doesn't have to work too hard to keep up with the voice actor. That is not the case. This is a very well-acted movie. The voice work is exceptional on every level. Everybody in this does an amazing job.
Not as good as the 1967 cartoon.
Wallopin' web snappers.
Parker!
At any rate, I really would specifically want to single out Jake Johnson, who plays what I would almost call Old Man Spider-Man. He plays a little bit older guy who's kind of seen too much.
The burned-out version of Spider-Man.
Burned-out version of Spider-Man, who is just delightful in this movie.
I kind of love this version of Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. Yes, because Spider-Man, the shtick with Spider-Man, and this is why, as far as best Spider-Man movies go, I still go with number 2 because it really hits the Spider-Man as a loser with a messed up personal life.
That is very true.
That was the Spider-Man of my youth, and that's always how I associate the character. And in this version, we get, among several versions of Spider-Man, we get one that is the ultimate loser Spider-Man, who still is very competent at his job, but things have slipped badly for him.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about Loser Spider-Man after we do a couple of ads, so we'll see you back here in a minute.
Did you know Concordia University has a sexual...
What a surprise.
Jesus. This is the long ad, it's 47 seconds, and then there's another 26 for the so just so you know where we're at.
Yep.
It's good, I'm enjoying this so far. Feel free to jump into Rocky and back.
Yeah, no, I was thinking it's like, I will probably end up speaking so much about Spider-Man that at the end we'll go, oh yeah, and then there was that Rocky film. Yeah.
2 or 3 things to say about the Rocky. I mean, not much more than 60 seconds worth, but you never know.
Right. Have we not discussed Rocky on the show before? I don't remember.
In general,
Yeah, I thought we kind of.
we did not do an episode. Like I wouldn't have pushed for that.
I thought we probably did like 5 minutes
26
about the series, but whatever.
It's not impossible. I'm gonna do the. I'm gonna start off with the here's who we are and what we're watching. I don't think we introduced ourselves.
Whatever. But you got to get the
No,
station
yeah,
identification in.
And we are back. I am Michael Brody. My co-host today is Shane Simmons. This is Cinema Smackdown, and you are listening to CJLO 1690, where today I am nursing a slightly sore throat, getting ready to do a show tonight. And
Well, good thing you're not burning your voice out on anything.
that's a good idea. Yeah. Well, my enthusiasm for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse knows no bounds. I will risk it. We are discussing the recent Spider-Man film and the recent Rocky movie. I guess that's I'm diminishing it a bit. It's the Creed film. Let's be clear. I don't want to make it sound like it's all about the old white guy.
Well, for me, that's to draw.
Right.
I like the continuity.
Well, we've talked a little bit about Spider-Man. We'll get back to him, but let's have a quick thought or two about this movie. So first of all, Shane, I have a quick question for you. So, worst Rocky movie ever? Question mark.
It's
I mean, is there a worse film?
my reaction was it was certainly another one of those.
Mm-hmm.
Now the recent Rocky films, starting with Rocky Balboa, have had a tonal shift that they're more grounded than the films have been since the first two Rocky films. So the first two Rocky films were sort of gritty 1970s looking, often gruesome boxing films. The fights are quite bloody. And then as of number 3, it goes into slick 80s mode.
Mm-hmm.
So it gets more fun, and Rocky increasingly becomes a superhero. By number 4, when he's fighting Drago, it's full-on flag-waving patriotism, Captain America in a boxing ring type stuff. That, for me, is arguably the low point, because it is very entertaining, but it is incredibly silly. This is the one that also has a robot in it.
Yeah, that's true.
It could always mark the low point of a formerly gritty series once the family gets a robot that talks. And Paulie ends up in a weird semi-sexual relationship with it. The less said, the better. And then there's the much maligned Rocky V, which was sort of it had been quite a while since a Rocky film came out, and it's like, hey, let's do another one, and it's the one that nobody likes. It's not as terrible as it's reputed to be.
No, it is. I'm just gonna jump in.
I am a Rocky series apologist in general, so
Well, I will jump in and say I know a little bit of history about Rocky V, and the big thing about Rocky V is it was meant to be the final film.
Right.
Now, in the sense of it being a final film, they recruited the original director of the first Rocky movie. They lured him back, John G. Avildsen, by telling him, all right, here's how it works. We're going to make this movie, and at the end of the movie, Rocky dies. And he said, all right, I'll do it if Rocky dies. And everybody agreed, and about a day into production, they told him, no, we've changed our minds.
Yeah, well, that stinks of Sylvester Stallone, who has this bee up his ass going back many years.
Wait, are you telling me that Rambo wasn't supposed to survive the first Rambo movie? Is that some sort of well-kept secret?
It's like someone read the book. Yeah, there's a few Stallone films where his character is clearly meant to die. The whole structure of the film is built towards his final sacrifice, and then it doesn't happen.
It's like he's the Tom Cruise of movies.
Well, he doesn't run as cool.
That is very true.
And Tom Cruise, I will admit, is a little more articulate. That voice.
I would say only a little.
A little, yeah. Well,
he's not known for his wonderful.
Unless he's talking about Scientology, then it's all gibberish.
Actually, I would argue that unless he's talking about how to seduce women, it's all gibberish. that is the high point of Tom Cruise's career for me. His upsettingly misogynist ranting in that film. In Magnolia.
Magnolia, yes, not the actual Tom Cruise, the character he played.
Well, here we go, kids. I said that I would give you guys a heads up about Clue at trivia. I don't even know if it's tonight because I've written so many different episodes of trivia now, but there will be a what movies was Tom Cruise nominated for trivia question coming up. So that will give some people a leg up if they feel like looking into it.
But that involves doing research on Tom Cruise, and
That's
who
right.
wants to do that?
But you could win a point at trivia.
Oh dear. I think I might want to abdicate that point.
I'll keep that in mind.
So Stallone, going back to fairly early career when he first started to make it, he made a film about unions in the early day of forming unions called Fist.
I have seen it.
And written by Joe Esterhaus before Joe Esterhaus was being paid $4 million per scribbling on the back of an envelope.
I'm sure it was only about $2 million for this one.
Yeah.
Not worth writing home about.
But in that film, spoiler alert, Stallone's character dies. And the film tanked. And since then, Stallone has had it in his head that nobody wants to see him die in a film. You know, even Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, which, you know, everyone wants to see the entire cast die. But he just refuses to die in his films, not realizing that the reason Fist tanked is because no one wanted to see a film about 1930s unions.
Just to quickly jump in on Fist, it's directed by Norman Jewison, a pretty great Canadian director who did Moonstruck, The Hurricane, a lot of other pretty good
more importantly, In the Heat of the Night.
and Thomas Crown Affair.
Yeah.
But no, I'm sorry, none of those are more important than Moonstruck, how dare you. Don't try to take my share away.
Well, you know, any film starring a maimed Nicolas Cage is...
Isn't by his very nature and definition, isn't Nicolas Cage always maimed? I'll get back to Nicolas Cage in a minute, but I wanted to mention about Fist. An interesting thing about that film is, it's much maligned movie. People hate it. It is written up very poorly, but it's a film that pretty much has an intermission. It is a fairly long movie, and somewhere in the middle of the movie there's a time jump. And right up until that time jump, I think it's an excellent film. It has structure it drives itself forward. Stallone is intriguing in it, and then they leap forward in time, and suddenly there's no stakes left, and the movie doesn't work. It just sort of feels flat. Now, you were saying Stallone didn't learn a good lesson from this because the movie tanked. I died in the movie tanked. Therefore,
yeah, people don't want to see me die, therefore I'll never die in another film.
People don't want to see me die. Stallone double didn't learn this lesson to some degree because it's not a death thing. Stallone's best film, by far, the best movie he has ever been associated with, again, this is my opinion, is the movie Copland, where I think he plays a damaged and interesting character, which is something he never does. He's always playing superhuman people. So to see him play a lowly, almost public servant, he's a sheriff.
Yeah, he's like a Joe Cop type of guy. He put on weight for it specifically, so he's got a bit of a gut in it. He looks
like a human being.
Yeah.
And I think it's the best acting he's ever done. I think it's the most compelling movie he's ever appeared in. But the movie didn't do great. It did fine, but it didn't do great. And Stallone took away from that the concept that, well, no one wants to see me be weak. So following...
No one wants to see me act at all, so I'll just go back to being a movie star.
So following the movie Copland, he made a string of blowing stuff up movies with nothing, no value.
Which really hasn't ended with the exception of the late Rocky films.
Yeah.
Nothing blows up in the late Rocky films.
Yeah, and Stallone, bizarrely, is one of those people who is now making straight-to-video movies as well as theatrical films. He has a string of... not Expendables. What was that movie called? The Prison Break movie that he made.
Oh.
Breakout.
You're the one who saw it, not me. So.
Game Plan, something. Escape Plan.
Oh, okay, there you go.
I found it!
Yep.
Escape Plan. He's made 3 Escape Plan movies now.
Oh my god.
They were all, the 2 and 3 were shot back to back, and they are those direct to Netflix kind of movies. They are horrid. They are made entirely for him to be able to walk in and shoot a cameo in about 3 days. that he'll get millions of dollars for, and it feels like his character is just popping his head into the movie for 10 seconds.
Is he on the phone like Bruce Willis?
Bruce Willis is in most of his movies now? No. But at any rate, yeah. And he's made a few others. A recent one, there was one released this week. Another one, a team-up movie, if you will, between Sylvester Stallone and Matthew Modine as a cop searching for a criminal's buried loot.
So the two greatest action stars of the 1980s.
I'm a huge Matthew Modine fan.
As am I, but, you know.
But his career ends in 1992. It is amazing. He has some of the finest roles in cinema between around 1984 and 1992, and then nobody ever let him work again on anything that was higher than subpar. His career after that point is really painful to watch.
Yeah, to go from starring in a Stanley Kubrick film to obscurity.
Well, to straight-to-video Stallone movies. You know.
Mind you, he did have a...
He's the dad in a Transporter film. That gives you the idea of where he ended up.
He had a notable but unfulfilling role in Dark Knight Rises.
Well, that is Christopher Nolan's fascination with bringing back B-level actors. I mean, he has Eric Roberts in The Dark Knight. He's really got his eye on certain groups of people who were kind of famous once, aren't anymore, and let's give them a cameo as a cop or a mobster.
Mm-hmm.
But let's get back to our topic. We were talking about the new Creed film.
Yeah, I was saying
the Spider-Verse.
So yeah, we've had about 3 Rocky films in a row where it feels like Rocky dies at the end of this one, right? And it gives you nope, and they keep giving him moments that are like that would be a good final moment, the final shot we see of Rocky in a movie ever, and then they keep ruining that as well by either doing one more scene or one more movie. And here's another one more movie with one more scene that shouldn't be in it.
Well, this is the one. There isn't really a great finale in this movie for Rocky. He's in it. He has his disappointments.
As has been pointed out, this is the first Rocky film in quite a while where he suffers no personal tragedy. He doesn't lose anyone important to them. He doesn't lose
his tiny thing is, I'm not getting along great with my son. That's his arc.
Remember how my son wasn't in Creed, the first Creed movie? Yeah, there's an issue there. Maybe I should call him. I don't know.
Remember how my son is the dad on This Is Us? Well, maybe we'll see him at the end. It'll be a thing where everyone's like, look, it's the guy from This Is Us. Maybe. Spoiler there.
Spoiler. Yeah, there's a couple of people who from the Rockyverse who show up. Minor spoiler, but if you were just aching to see Bridget Nielsen on the big screen again, guess what? Here she is.
Yeah, you are reminding me of the cast and the people in the movie. We've got Dolph Lundgren reprising his role of Russian guy that Rocky has to fight.
Yeah, there's basically a lot of non-Russians playing Russians in this film.
And we've got some actor playing his son, who's the contender, and Bridget Nielsen returning. No one has a story in this movie. The arcs are horrendously poorly thought out. It is this movie, and this is spoilery. So if you don't want to hear spoilers, mute your radio. Put a pillow over your ears. I will say this: the lead character, Creed, his arc in this movie is, I kind of want to do this thing. Why? 'Cause I'm an immense jerk. Oh.
Yep.
Okay. So you want to fight this guy because I need to prove I'm better than him. Because I'm better than everyone. Didn't you hear me? I'm better than everyone.
I want to fight him because 2 unrelated people had another fight years ago. And there seems to be some demand for this. And
yes.
I'm not a proper man unless I take on this fight.
Anyway, so here, massive spoilers. He fights the guy. He gets his ass handed to him. He takes a while to recover. And because of a technicality in the loss, he technically didn't lose, which honestly felt so dirty to me.
Well, yeah.
It felt dirty to me. I couldn't root for his character at all. And then he decides he'll do a rematch to really prove who's who. And there's a moment in the movie where he and his wife sit down, and his wife says, I was fully against you doing this in the first place. And he goes, I understand, honey, and I know that I was wrong to have that fight in the first place, but I'm going to go fight him again. And when she asks him why, he basically says, you know, for the same reasons I fought him the first time, because I'm an immense dick.
Yeah, he
He tries to justify it by saying...
extremely unlikable in this film.
He basically says, she says, why do you have to fight this guy? And his answer is pretty much, because.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It is almost the worst screenwriting I have ever seen.
See, past Rocky films, they got by in the fact that Rocky is a lovable lug. He's a dummy, but he's a good-hearted dummy. And Apollo Creed, his initial nemesis, turns out to also be a decent, good man as the series progresses. And when he meets his fate in Rocky IV, it means something. Whereas his son, Adonis Creed, in the Creed movies... I like the first Creed movie, which was sort of a rebooty, remake-y sort of Rocky film. Creed 2 covers the same ground as Rocky 2, 3, and 4. It kind of remakes all of them in one shot. And it forgets to make Adonis Creed a compelling character, because at the beginning, he's already world champ, he's rich, and he's just kind of insufferable, and he doesn't improve.
Yeah, it is amazing how there's no redemptive arc for him at all. I can't imagine anyone watches this movie and goes, yeah, I'm on your side. It's not there. There's no foundation for it.
Yeah, I liked Michael B. Jordan better as a genocidal maniac in Black Panther. He had
more charm.
He was more charming. Yes.
Speaking of Michael B. Jordan, I am personally not a fan of his acting or his style. However, it turns out Michael B. Jordan, huge fan of CJLO 1690, which is the radio station you're listening to.
So thanks for that, but we don't really like your career very much.
You are still listening to Cinema Smackdown, where apparently we're doling out a little Smackdown right now. Not much, but a little bit. Some very mild Smackdown.
Enough to burn some bridges.
Speaking of a different movie, we were speaking of earlier with an African-American lead, which is Into the Spider-Verse, the Spider-Man movie.
With an old white dude as mentor.
That's true. But that's a nice juxtaposition. I was getting a little tired of Morgan Freeman having that market cornered. It's time for Jake Johnson to be the old white mentor. I want to talk a little bit about this movie, and I hate to use words like groundbreaking, but it has some pretty interesting style choices that were made. It is a different kind of animated film. When you watch it, you say, well, I haven't quite seen a cartoon that looks like this before. It has there's an amount of realism in the art, there's an amount of extreme cartoonishness to it, but what I really got into, and I didn't think I would, is there's sort of this mixed media thing happening where the animation keeps changing, and depending on what character's in the story, you might have a completely different style happening. The line art can be different, not to mention the fact that there are crazy comic book things thrown into this, like captions. Characters will have a caption over their head, and it wasn't annoying like I expected it to be.
Also, written sound effects.
Yeah, written sound effects in a couple of cases. What I was going to say is, I want to compare it to one of my all-time favorite movies, which also did this to an incredibly successful degree, which is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Scott Pilgrim has cartoonish things thrown into the mix in this very artistic way. It is incredibly smooth. I won't say it's subtle, but it's subtler than it could have been. Scott Pilgrim, always a film worth revisiting. I watched it again about 3 months ago and was really struck by the fact that during action sequences there was a little hint of lines. Whenever someone would throw a punch, you would see just faintly around their arms lines, like speed lines to hit somebody. And when they struck something, impact that was drawn on screen in cartoonish ways, and it is really effective in that movie. I think if it was toned down enough, you could put that in a legitimate dramatic action film, and it would not bother me. I'd find it to be a nice enhancement in some cases.
But it would have to be an action film starring Sonny Chiba.
There you go. I'm always down for one of those. The Street Fighter can never die.
Yeah. If you're going for hyper stylized, that's kind of the vanguard.
That's very true. So we're still speaking about the visual style of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. So there are different art styles in this, I was saying. There is a manga character, and when she shows up, she is not drawn the way the other characters are drawn. She is very different. And there's a cartoon character
Like something straight out of Looney Tunes.
Essentially a spider pig. And he's drawn with that style. Every character is rendered with a form of brush strokes that are consistent when they move. So it's a CG, it's a computer-generated cartoon movie, but the way that they design the characters, and this is really interesting, when you look into the characters' faces, and there are a lot of close-ups in this movie, the two lead characters would be Miles Morales, one of the lead characters would be Gwen. So they call her Spider-Gwen, they call her Spider-Woman, they call her Ghost Spider. I don't know if they did in the movie, but they do in the comics sometimes. When you see the close-ups of these two characters, you'll notice some very interesting things. They are not perfect looking. They have slight details that are, you can't call them errors, they're stylized. When you look into Miles Morales' eyes, there's a brush line that they used to draw the circle of his eye. And one of his eyes is slightly off-center. Just slightly. And I kept noticing it and realizing it was an intentional choice. And it gave him character. The Gwen character has one slightly chipped front tooth. And when you pick up on that, you think, oh, that's a style choice. And then you realize when every single character just has this straight white line for teeth, there's not much there. But it really added something to her. She had a lot of great details, though. This is a huge spoiler in the sense that it really made me care about her character, but Gwen has an entire story arc about her hair, which is awesome. Everything about that just made it really intriguing. But yeah, I kind of have no end of praise for this movie. Like I said, the line work was interesting. The visual stylings. I wanted to mention something about computer animated films in general. That this is a piece of sort of cinema history. When Hollywood really started making cartoons using computers, when they threw off all hand-drawn animation, one of the first movies they made was The Lion King. That movie was made in computers. They drew up the characters on paper, and then they started inputting information into computers, and then they built scenes using that. And it's still a hand-drawn style movie. But in the first tests that they did for The Lion King, nothing worked. And the problem was, they couldn't figure out why it didn't look like animation anymore. Everything made sense. All of the information that they would normally do with their hands was in this computer, but when they ran the scenes, people watched them and they felt uncomfortable. And they said, we don't know what's wrong. And they finally realized what was wrong with The Lion King's fully computer-generated sequences was that there was no errors in them. And the errors, the little line mistakes that are made by hand-drawn, is what makes animation live and breathe. And so they artificially inserted errors throughout the entire Lion King film. And that movie still looks like hand-drawn animation. Now, the process I'm talking about is no longer used whatsoever because full CGI movies just basically build a model and stick with it. Mm-hmm. When they move, there's no sense. The physics, I still feel like the physics aren't quite there. This movie's almost 20 years old now, but the biggest leap I have seen moving forward in animation was Monsters, Inc. Because when I saw that movie, I said, wow, that looks like fur.
Yeah. That was the one that got fur right for the first time.
Yeah, they got fur right. But each film has had to overcome some major hurdles. At any rate, that was a little bit about The Lion King. We are still talking about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, well, for content, what really struck me was we're now at a point with so many superhero movies out that it is refreshing to not have everything over-explained for the newbies. Or people who have no comic book background, no comic book experience, no appreciation for the genre. This is a film that does not hold your hand. It throws you into references and backstory and stuff that it just assumes you know a lot about Spider-Man and the associate characters, and are just willing to run with it.
Doesn't treat you like a dummy.
It doesn't have to explain. By the way, this villain is this, and this is the origin of that, and it's
I want to mention this. The movie opens with a very quick little montage where Spider-Man narrates the film. By the way, I don't think we've said this so far. There's about 9 Spider-Men in this movie, coming from different places. They're all very well handled, and I worried that they'd kind of pile up on each other and get annoying.
Yeah, that was my assumption about the film, and the degree to which this is well handled shocked me.
So when the movie opens, we've got, let's just call him White Spider-Man. So it's Peter Parker Spider-Man opens the movie with narration saying, "Hey, I'm Spider-Man, and here's some stuff I've done. Y'all know me." And then
and this is sort of like the idealized version of Spider-Man.
And they do a very quick montage, and if you're paying attention, you will notice that they recreate. Here, this is phenomenal. They recreate the upside down kiss from Spider-Man 1. They recreate the saving the train sequence from Spider-Man 2, and then they recreate the Peter Parker walking down the street, dancing and giving finger guns to people from Spider-Man 3, which is
and being a complete ass. Yeah.
Which I always enjoyed that scene, and I enjoyed that whole movie. Not as a full movie, but as moments, even though people hate Spider-Man 3. I'm kind of amused by it. It then goes so far as to recreate the ferry sequence from Spider-Man Homecoming. Those are all in there. They're all like the same guy's adventures. You notice what's conspicuously absent from that list?
Any Andrew Garfield?
Anything from the Garfield verse. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've left out his rhino fight. They've left out at least I think so. At any rate, yeah, I don't believe they mentioned that, so I guess this Marvel universe is not doing anything with that.
It's just a general acknowledgement that those films suck.
Yeah.
But that put me in mind, and one of the things it doesn't hold your hand about is the idea that these superhero stories have been retold so many times that now there are many versions of the same character. And this is like, okay, now there are parallel dimensions with this same character, or people who have gone through the same transformation into being a Spider-Man type of character. And they are converging and meeting for the first time. It put me in mind of, and here's one you don't care for, but I'm going to go for it anyway, the Lego Batman movie, which it doesn't draw parallels, like it doesn't create parallel universes, but it sort of acknowledges that, by the way, every incarnation of Batman you've seen, yeah, that's all in this character's history. Right. And there is a flashback sequence of stuff he's been through where we see the posters recreated in Lego of the various Batman movies. And it ultimately culminates in a flashback to Adam West Batman. And it was just sort of this all of it's like, yeah, you know, there were these different periods of my career. The weird Tim Burton period, the neon disco club Joel Schumacher years, the dark Christopher Nolan years, and way back when there was me doing the Batusi.
Yeah, I mean, I don't despise the Lego Batman movie. I loved his inclusion in the Lego movie, but when they gave him a whole film, even though I could enjoy the fact that it didn't hold your hand about crazy DC Comics continuity, I didn't really like the movie, and I really didn't enjoy Michael Cera's Robin, who never goes away, and he's so hard to take.
See, I just like those two films, this and Spider-Verse, because they acknowledge the warts and all history of the character. So they make reference to stuff that is kind of, with the exception of referring to the Andrew Garfield films, they make reference to stuff in the past. It's like, yeah, this is silly, and we don't care.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know, the Batman Lego movie had a lot of peripheral, silly villains that showed up for cameos, and it just acknowledges the entire history as opposed to the usual Hollywood approach with a lot of these films where they sort of second-guess themselves out of being too immersed in the comic book universes and said, oh, this is silly, let's recreate this. Oh, the costumes, you know, are silly, let's try and do a gritty version of that. And it's nice to see these films just say, yes, these characters have history, not all of it is beautiful, but we're just going to embrace all of it.
Well, I don't know what you mean by silly characters. Everyone loves Kite Man. And on that note, I'm just going to take a really quick break and listen to a couple of ads before we come back for some final thoughts on the two film franchises that we've been rambling on about for 45 minutes. Not too long, 1 minute.
Mm-hmm. You could skip plugging my book this week. It's no, you know, we don't have to do that every week.
No, I wasn't going to plug the book necessarily. I'm going to mention that you're an author.
Okay.
If that's cool.
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to plug myself again at the end, so it would be weird not to.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'll leave it to you. Just say you have a website and you write books that people should be reading.
Right.
Put it like, they're good, read them, you know. was that guy's real voice, but this is our real voices. I'm making an allusion to the ad that just played, so if you're listening to this in the future on MP3 and you skipped it, that will make no sense whatsoever. But I will mention again that you are listening to CGLO 1690, and this is Cinema Smackdown. I'm Michael, this is Shane. We have been delving into the Spider-Verse while dipping a toe into the Rockyverse.
We're linking them because we had a weird double feature.
That's right, we had a weird double feature on Thursday, and we...
They were both superhero movies of a sort anyway. So.
No argument here. They are absolutely ridiculous superhero movies. Speaking of the king of superhero movies, or the one-time cameo king of superhero movies, Stan Lee, of course, has a cameo in this film. And I would argue that after this cameo, I realize that Marvel has some ready-to-go Stan Lee cameos. They filmed a dozen of them a couple of years ago. Just things they could insert here or there if they need
because you wanted to work that 95-year-old to death.
I will say that his cameo in this movie is a perfect goodbye cameo.
Yeah, it is.
It's absolutely perfect.
Of all the Stan Lee cameos, I would have to say this is certainly the one that made me go, oh, that was a nice one.
Yeah. My other possible argument for what to do going forward with Stan Lee cameos is, and I've already mentioned this to Shane, but I will now mention it to the world, I believe Marvel should do what Colonel Sanders' company has done and farm the role out to various people so that in the next movie we have somebody dressed as Stan Lee with his trademark hairstyle.
Yeah, you give him the mustache and the sunglasses, yeah.
And do an impression of him, because he's very easy to do as an impression. And then get your standard weird comedian to come in and do it. So the next movie, here's my vote, I vote Gilbert Gottfried. I 100% want to see him walk in and do an Excelsior and walk in.
Did I tell you I created Spider-Man all by myself? Steve Ditko had nothing to do with it.
Double Excelsior. At any rate, honestly, I would be so fine with that. And in 3 or 4 movies, we can switch it over, and it can be Reba McEntire.
No, it's true. He really is the Colonel Sanders of comic books.
Yeah, and I mean that with a little bit of love.
Oh, yeah. No,
a little bit of love. So, speaking of other people in the movie, we touched on Nicolas Cage, who, why did we bring up Nicolas Cage?
Because, we were talking about him being maimed in Moonstruck.
Oh, that's right, Moonstruck. At any rate, Nicolas Cage is in this movie playing a Spider-Man. He is playing an interesting detective version of Spider-Man.
Yeah, noir Spider-Man.
Very stylized, and in fact, the joke with him is he's in black and white. He's literally in black and white, even though he's in our universe. He's still black and white in this, and Cage plays it so straight. It's every line of dialogue he has is crazy pulp, and yet there's no hint of parody in there. He does such a wonderful job of this, and I really want to single out Nicolas Cage, not in this movie specifically, but this is the year of the Cage more than any year I can remember, because this is the year that Nicolas Cage had a massive film comeback for a lot of people in a little movie called Mandy. Not my favorite movie, but there's no denying that this is a weird and powerful film, and certainly, as someone once put it, and they're not wrong, the Nick Cageiest of any Nick Cage movie. Mm-hmm. And that would be a Cage-verse film, I would say. And aside from his Spider-Man cameo this year, he's also in the Teen Titans Go to the movies.
Finally getting to see Nicolas Cage play Superman. And the long-promised and long-denied...
and I will go so far as to say, I think it's my favorite Superman. He may not be my favorite Spider-Man, but he is definitely my favorite Superman. As I may even have quoted this before, but it is the Nick Cage movie in which Nick Cage gets to, as Superman, look at the Teen Titans and say, but you guys are, you're just a bunch of goofsters. Which is perhaps the finest word that could have ever come out of his mouth.
Yeah, it takes a certain type of actor to deliver a word like goofster. Nicolas Cage could do it, Christopher Walken could do it, and damn few others.
I will say again, on the note of good things this year, I will probably get into this further in future episodes. I think that 2018 has to date been the worst movie, and worst year in the history of movies. I think we've had Not so much that the films were bad this year, but they're all mediocre.
Okay, curmudgeon.
I saw nothing but mediocre movies this year, with only a couple of exceptions. And two of the exceptions were Into the Spider-Verse and Teen Titans Go to the Movies. These were shockingly good films in a year with a whole lot of Jurassic World 2s and Incredible 2s, which were just movies. They were very flat.
We've both seen stuff this year that was pretty interesting. We did have a threat. We did threaten each other, saying if we can't think of stuff to say about Spider-Man and Rocky for a full hour, we're just going to launch into Under the Silver Lake.
Oh, we'll do that next week. But we do have a lot to say about that.
Speaking of fantastic Andrew Garfield films.
Well, I was going to say, speaking of Andrew Garfield versus. But, at any rate, there's got to be a little bit more to say about the Spider-Man film. There was a lot there. We brought it up earlier. We'll bring it up again. Jake Johnson playing curmudgeon-y Spider-Man is so good in this that you know what? I don't want to take away from the fact that he's not the lead. The lead is Miles Morales, and he's great. He is a really likable, young role model character. I am fully on board with the depiction of him. I will go so far as to say, I am a comic book reader. I have read all the Miles Morales comics. He's not handled as well as he is in this film in the comics. I've never found him this interesting. They do a great job of making him a living, breathing human being who's having trouble because he acquires powers in this and is tripping over himself trying to figure it out for the entire movie. He wears the worst Spider-Man costume you have ever seen for 90% of this film.
Yeah, that was nice, actually.
Yeah, I was really happy with a lot of the choices.
It's basically a Halloween costume.
It is fully
a mass-produced Halloween costume too, because there's a plot element that involves a lot of people buying Spider-Man costumes, and it's just another one of those. Except he actually has the powers to go with it, but he doesn't know how to use them.
Exactly, and there's gag after gag of him trying to show people his powers and not being able to turn them on, which is really wonderful. And there are so many little cute moments in this that would be a shame to spoil. I would almost never say this, but it's a cartoon movie, but go see it. It's actually worth your time. There's so few of those. So many of them I say, well, it can wait. You'll get to it.
It gets my endorsement just for having a 2-second cameo by the Spidey-mobile.
That is true. Yeah, if you have any understanding of Spider-Man lore, you will be rewarded endlessly while watching this movie.
And of course, as per usual, stay till the end of the credits, because there's more film. And it's a reference that I had to have explained to me by my compatriot here, but it is a wonderful little capper to the film.
Yeah, it's a very obscure reference, but if you're familiar with the video games, I believe that character has made pretty strong appearances in the games in the last 10 years. But the funny part is there is a voice cameo at the end of the film, and it is the most famous actor in the movie. more or less. Maybe not more famous than Nicolas Cage, but pretty famous.
Oh, it's one of those last-minute cameos by Sean Connery? Awesome.
Yeah, that's right. No, it's Sean Penn. You know how he looks Spider-Man. So it's a nice to be able to give a film a ringing endorsement. Nice not to sweep a superhero movie under the rug just because, damn, I've seen so many of these. As we speak, it is December 16th, 2018. The movie has just opened. It did really good business in the Thursday night previews, but we have yet to see if it will really do well this weekend. I mean, they're predicting it's going to do great, but it's a very insulated community, a Spider-Man cartoon movie about the lesser-known Spider-Man character.
Right.
So there's every chance it won't be quite the hit that that it should be in Hollywood terms. I just really hope that it does well enough to go forward with that sequel they're talking about, because the thing is, I want the filmmakers to learn their own lesson from this movie. There are 9 or 10 Spider-Mans in this movie, and they balanced it really well. The secret to making a sequel is not to add 30 more. That would not make that better. I will even argue that this movie works better before the halfway point. We have about 3 people with spider powers for about half the movie. And then around halfway through, we add 3 or 4 more. It didn't kill the film for me, but I much preferred the dynamic in the beginning, where we were really hanging out with these specific characters. It never felt like there was much overlap or difficulty there. Once we added the comic relief pig character, the manga character, and the Nick Cage character, it got a little more complicated.
Yeah, that was a moment when they were like, okay, and now we have to acknowledge there are some fairly ridiculous versions of this character.
Yes.
And they are genuinely from comics that we've seen in the past, but...
Yeah, if y'all out there...
Peter Porker, the Amazing Spider Ham, is a real character.
He works for the Daily Beagle.
Porker!
Exactly. Yeah, when you're a pig and you refer to yourself as Ham, there's something very wrong with the universe you come from. Not since Howard the Duck have we seen such clever wordplay.
At least Howard was horrified by being served eggs. So.
You want me to eat these? That's cannibalism. So that was.
Thank you for my plate of miscarriage.
Oh, don't go there. That's way rougher than I was willing to go. I thought cannibalism funny. Other things not so funny.
Hey, it was in a George Lucas film. That was the joke.
Yeah, George. Just shaking my head in quiet silence.
But yeah, fingers crossed for if they can pull this off, they can certainly pull off a proper Steve Gerber style Howard the Duck movie.
Oh wow, no thanks. I just hope that if they do another one of these, it focuses on Miles again, because that was the character. Miles and Gwen are the lovable, easy to imagine continuing forward characters, and of course. The true hero of the movie, middle-aged Spider-Man.
Oh, absolutely.
With his paunch.
Yeah, paunchy Spider-Man. That was awesome.
Spider-Man. For a paunchy Spider-Man ongoing series.
And yet, like I said, true to the character though. Not a burnout. He still is a functional Spider-Man. It's just he's had a rough time. All
right, so that's it for us for this week. We saw 2 movies. We enjoyed one. We were falling asleep during the other. We'll leave it to you to guess which was which. I'll say this, I rarely say things like this. Go to the cinema. People never go to the cinema anymore. And while you're there, don't look at your phone and don't talk.
And by all means, see the Spider-Man movie in 2D.
I can't say. We didn't see it in 3D. Maybe if you're a 3D fan, I'm sure it's magic.
3D improves nothing.
Yeah, well, I can't argue with you there. So, I'm Michael Brody. This evening, I will be hosting trivia at Grumpy's, downtown on Bishop Street, not too far from Guy Metro. It's actually right in the middle between Guy Metro and Peel Metro. We have a good time. We start around 9:15 to 9:30. It's a wonderful show. Sorry if it's a bit late for some people, but it is worth the effort. Come down. If there's not a lot of people, you'll probably win something. I'm going to give out some extra prizes tonight, by the way. There's a little secret there for you. I got some holiday-themed things I don't want to see go to waste. So we are going to give a few of those away. I have been ably assisted this afternoon by Shane Simmons. Shane, tell us what you'd like to sell.
Oh, books. Books and books and books. Check me out on my Amazon author page, Shane Simmons, at Amazon.com.
And we are going to let you go now. Again, good movies, good times. Any final parting thoughts about life?
Well, I am looking forward to the next 12 Spider-Man movies and the next 12 Rocky movies.
Well, there were 2 real ones coming very, very soon. So we're going to let you enjoy those. And while you're waiting for those to come out, here's a little automated music for you while you wait for the news to come on in about 40 seconds.
Enjoy our Robo DJ.
Yeah, I wanted to get off the air before 3, which we barely managed, because I know the last couple words will cut off on the thing. So I was like, let's check it out. Not bad. That was a fun show, actually. Fine spirits and...
And luckily no one's listening, so we probably won't get too many angry calls and emails about me making a miscarriage.
We were still on the air.
Oh.
For that last little bit.
That's good.
I cut it right before you said miscarriage.
Because, you can't get enough references to that on the air.
It's fine. Nothing.